Okay guys, here's one more example of one you might be asked to simplify. This might take you back a little bit because if you look at this 1 plus cosine x and 1 minus cosine x, I know you probably don't remember much about doing this, but those are actually conjugates of one another. Similar to when you have square roots and you have to get them out of the denominator, we have to rationalize using conjugates. These two are conjugates. Okay, so what we're going to do here, first of all, is because we're subtracting, we have to have a common, meaning that our common denominator for all of this is going to be that 1 plus cosine x times 1 minus cosine x. And the way this works out is whatever we're missing, so if this is our whole denominator, then on this top half we would be missing the 1 minus cosine x. That's what we multiply the top by. Okay, so this would become 1 minus cosine x when I multiply. And on this side I would be missing the 1 plus cosine x. So I would have minus, and then if I do the 1 plus cosine x, we'll go about simplifying this in the next step. Okay, so in my next step, I would say that's equivalent to having 1 minus cosine x minus 1 minus cosine x. Okay, on the bottom here, I'm going to leave that as it is for a minute. The last thing I usually want to do is multiply out, and that's just in case I can reduce anything. Okay, I don't want to get rid of stuff if I might be able to reduce it. Okay, so in this instance, I'm going to have 1 minus 1, which cancel each other out. And so on top, I'm going to have negative 2 of those cosine x's. And then on the bottom, obviously these are not going to cancel with that, so I would go about my multiplication process to see what I could come up with. And 1 times 1 will give me 1. My middle term would cancel because they are conjugates, and then I would end up with negative cosine squared x. Okay, we might think we're done, but we want to check to see what our formulas list has to say about this. Is there anything that we could use for our formulas list that would help us? So I'm going to kind of minimize that screen for a minute and bring up our formulas list. Remember I said anytime you have 1 and a trig function squared, let's check it out. Okay, so if I come here, I'm going to be looking at this first Pythagorean identity that says sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1. That means if I had 1 minus cosine squared, I could actually have sine squared there. I don't think that that particular case would help me tremendously, but I'm going to go ahead and put it in anyways. That would give me negative 2 cosine x over sine squared x. And all that simple step allows me to do now is usually when you simplify, you don't want fractions anymore. And so all that allows me to do is be able to break this down so that I could have something like negative 2 times cosine x over sine x times 1 over sine x. And again, all I'm doing is breaking this down into each individual part, so that's multiplication. I have one of my sine x's under cosine, one of them under 1. And what that allows me to do is I don't any longer have to have fractions. If we look up here, cosine over sine actually becomes cotangent. So I could change this to be negative 2 cotangent x. And 1 over sine can actually be cosecant. So I could say times cosecant x. And just like that, we have no more fractions, and that's usually what simplifying would be like.